Hello, and I want to welcome everyone to our March Art Byte, brought to you by the Alaska Arts Education Consortium. Art Bytes are a monthly, hours-long arts integration professional development workshop designed to support Alaska's teachers to integrate arts across their curriculums. Each month during the school year, we strive to bring diverse topics, techniques, mediums taught by Alaska's own educators to your very classroom through distance delivery. We hope that you will walk away with great ideas to help you integrate the arts into your curriculum and classroom practice. A recording of this Art Byte will be available after today, and it will be on our AEEC website, akarts.org, and also will be emailed out to those that have registered. So thank you again for joining us. AEEC is proud to start incorporating land acknowledgements into our events. Here's an example. I am blessed to live and work in the traditional lands of the Sugpiat people of Kodiak Island, specifically the Chinook tribe of Kodiak. So we will invite all of you to share your land acknowledgements in our chat box during our Zoom events in any way that feels organic and natural for you. So, Kuyana.
With almost all age groups. And I feel the same energy with every single group that I work with, maybe more with it's, like first graders or something like that, because they're just so fun. But I'm just very excited to be here with you guys. So without any further ado here, let me do a screen share. We can get started. All right. Well, here you can see some of the tools of, well, since COVID. I have here my handy dandy camera, my paper, pencil, and my best friend, for sure, my eraser. This is my desk that I'm working in here, and you can see that I've decorated my desk. I made this last summer specifically because I needed a space to work from with just my computer and teaching drawing, and so that it was separate from where I was doing painting, engraving, carving, etc. So formline design, it's an art form that is primarily residing from to the south of the Columbia River, and then to the north, all the way up to Yakutat, and even a little bit up into Eyak territory, which is Valdez and Cordova, and then through later trade even made it down into Supiaq territory, which is Prince William Sound, Seward, and all of those areas along there, all the way out to Kodiak. Formline is based off of the use of just a few very simple shapes, one of which is an ovoid, which you can shape with your fingers like this. If you still have your thumbnails and haven't lost them in a bandsaw or skill saw accident, or nailing shingles on your roof, your thumbnails usually are shaped like an ovoid. The palm of your hand is also a bit of an ovoid shape. So these are places that these shapes can be naturally found. You could also find them in the grocery store, looking at mushrooms, like your white button mushrooms or your community mushrooms, for example, your shiitakes. You can find them outside in mushroom shapes as well. And you could also find it inside. This here is a very special artifact that I keep with me. This is a very special bone. If anybody would like to venture a guess as to what it is and where it's from, quickly in the chat, I will see what you guys think real quick. This is very cool and special. It is a vertebrae, yes. It is. It is from, don't worry, it's not human. It is the lower back spine whale, maybe before it's born. This is from a juvenile black bear, or excuse me, juvenile brown bear, from the lower back section of the spine. I call this my mother-in-law bone. I had to unfortunately put this bear down because it was going after my mother-in-law while we were picking fish out of the nets, and she was picking fish out of a net that had gone dry, and started sneaking up on her and then would not back down. So it was unfortunate. Anyway, a year later, I went back and rummaged through the bones, and I found this. And this was the only thing I kept from that bear. And it is, I think, one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. Next to my children, of course. So we are going to be drawing ovoids. Another shape that is used is a U shape and also S shapes, but we're going to be focusing mainly on two shapes, an ovoid and a U shape. So we take our handy dandy pencil. It's mechanical. Make sure you have a little lead sticking out. And we're going to start with drawing some guidelines. Okay. And our guidelines, we're going to take and start just pivoting from our wrist, moving our hand back and forth. And we're going to get a nice little curved line going across our page. We move our hand down just a little bit. And same thing, we get another nice curved line. Okay. And I know sometimes people are really intimidated by drawing form line and they tell me, oh, I can't draw anything other than stick figures. I was like, well, great. Stick figures are lines. We're just drawing lines. You could do this. Most important thing for me when I'm doing this is just to make sure that everybody at least tries. So now an ovoid is a symmetrical shape. So we have our two top and bottom guidelines. We're going to find about where the middle is, and we're going to kind of lightly mark that on our paper. And then a little distance away from the center, we're going to draw a parallel line to the center. Straight up and down. And the same distance on the other side, parallel line to the center. Some people feel that they need to very carefully measure this out with rulers. And I like to tell them, you're thinking too hard. This is an organic shape. Let this be an organically drawn shape. It's more fun this way anyway. All right, here we go. We have our top and bottom guidelines, our center and our side guidelines marked. By the way, if at any time you think I'm going too fast, don't hesitate to speak up real quick and say, wait, hold on just a sec, because I don't want to lose you. Okay, now we're going to start rounding off our corners. We're going to have a larger rounded corner here on the top. So we're going to take and start on our guideline back a ways, and we're going to come out, get a running start, and come on through, curving off of our line, down into our side guideline, and following through, kind of like you'd overrun first base in baseball. Okay. Then we kind of mark where our center is on our vertical, because this is going to be the widest point of our ovoid. And we can take and come down and break off. Huh? Just a little too fast?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm going to get this line drawn in and then you'll catch up. So we get our corner rounded coming down, and then we round off a small corner on the bottom into our bottom guideline. All right. Thank you for letting me know I'm going too fast. I get really excited when I'm drawing, and I tend to want to just plow on through. All right, so we have half of our ovoid drawn in, working on your top curved line, trying to make it as smooth a transition as you can from the top line into the side, and then coming down off the side, breaking off, and then coming down and curving into your bottom line. Now, once you've gone that far, the fun part is doing the same thing on the other side. And if you're working on paper, that's a lot easier when you can rotate it around. Trying to get the same curve on one side as you did on the other. And coming down into our bottom corner on the other side. Now, when drawing form line, there are a lot of rules, and I've had interesting conversations with some of my professors, especially up in Fairbanks, over the rules of form line, where they flat out stated, "Oh, I don't like it. It's too many rules, not enough freedom." And I said, "Well, actually, no. There's a lot of freedom in rules. But there's also an understanding of our culture and society, where we have a lot of protocol, a lot of rules to everything that we do, from how we're supposed to drive on the road, to how we're supposed to work at our jobs, to how we're supposed to, our expectations of being a student, and our expectations of what our teachers have for us. All of those are rules, all of those are protocols. Every single line in form line is a reflection of that. If you can follow all of the rules, you create an image that is beautiful and aesthetically pleasing, that people can follow. So once we've gotten our ovoid drawn in, we take our best friend, Mr. Eraser, and we can clean up our guidelines. And you should be left with a very beautiful looking ovoid. That looks, at least to the best of your ability, symmetrical. Now, once you've drawn one, the fun part is drawing many. So here's one type of ovoid. You can draw your ovoids to fit the needs of your design, whatever that may be. So once you've drawn one, you practice by drawing more. And don't be afraid to vary the sizes. For instance, here's one that is just really long, not very tall. And this kind of looks like some of your really fun mushrooms out in the woods, especially those pretty red ones with the white dots. Don't eat them. You could also make your ovoid very tall, but not very wide. And I'm really sorry I'm making this look easy. The idea is, with lots of practice, you'll get better and faster at drawing ovoids, just like if you were to learn to play an instrument. The longer you practice going between notes, the easier it gets. And pretty soon you're making music. So we're going to take just a minute here, draw another ovoid if you can. Work on through it. Remember your guidelines. Remember to find where your centers are to help you with symmetry as best as you can. Sometimes people tell me, your ovoids aren't quite perfect. And I was like, well, they're about as perfect as I am.
I like that.
Sorry, I'm late. I just got off work and came home. This is Annie from Unilocally.
Welcome. Thank you for coming in. I'm happy you made it.
Thank you. It's good to
All right, wrap up your ovoid that you're working on. And we will move on here. Turn your paper over. Or if you're like me, you have another fresh one ready to go right underneath. We're going to move on with drawing our ovoid. So, and we're going to do an ovoid and then learn about a U shape afterwards. So we want our ovoid to be somewhat central on the vertical of our paper here. We draw our curved lines for, go through this real quick for our late comer so that she's not too far behind. We have our curved lines here. We mark our center and put in our side guidelines parallel to our center. And symmetrically as best we can. And we round off our corners. big curve on the top coming into our side guideline towards the middle, then breaking off just a little bit and coming down to a smaller curve on our bottom corner, and then doing the same thing on the other side. All right. Now I'm not going to erase my center here. We're going to be using that, or at least I'm going to be using that to help as a visual. In fact, I'll make it a little bit darker here, so it's a little bit more visible. Clean up our guidelines, make our ovoid look pretty. If you make a mistake, it's okay. That's why we draw with pencil. But try to make sure you go back and correct your mistake with your pencil first and then erase afterwards so that you're not accidentally making the same mistake over and over and over again. And this way we can see what we did funny and learn from it. Now, once we have our ovoid drawn, we're going to be doing a form line ovoid. And form line is exactly what it sounds like. It's forming our lines. Okay, so rules again. Our ovoid is going to be going from thin on the bottom up to thick on the top, and then back down to thin on the side and the bottom again. So we can mark that in with some guidelines to start with, just so that you get used to the idea of making things this way. Okay, so my bottom, you can see, is narrower than my top up here. And I want to then curve my sideline from my top right into this same width down here, coming down to my bottom line. So that we're kind of almost parallel across the bottom here. Okay.
This is Ryan. Is there a rule about like comparing the thickness of the top with the thinness of the bottom?
Not so much a rule as there is an aesthetic, depending on what culture you're from. Tsimshian have a tendency to really like the thinner lines.
Very good. Thank you.
Tlingit have a tendency to like slightly thicker lines. And you can see here, my corners aren't quite even, so make our correction. Haidas have typically a little bit more curvy lines, somewhere in between. And that's just for a basic understanding of the aesthetic. We try to follow the same rules up and down the coast as far as the artwork is concerned. Somewhat. It varies depending on how far north and how far south you go. Okay, so here we have our form line ovoid. We have an outside edge and an inside edge to our line. The space in the middle here is our line. This is our positive space. We color this in. This becomes one singular line. And it's not a boring line because we are going from thin to thick to thin. That's one of the rules in form line. Unless it's a fine line, your lines are going from thin to thick to thin. I know some people like to compare it to the likings of calligraphy. But we're not doing this with a fun and special pen. And now we have our form line ovoid, and we have an understanding of our positive space, which is where our line is, and our negative space, which is where our line isn't. And then we take this ovoid here, and we are going to draw another ovoid in here to finish this off. And this ovoid is a floating ovoid, okay? And so rules, it sits up high inside of our ovoid here, comes down, and it has narrow negative space at the top. It has wide negative space at the bottom. So that we are going from thin to thick to thin. Now, if your ovoid is thicker, your floating ovoid is thicker than your top line of your form line ovoid, then we need to break the line. Here's a rule of measure in form line. The thickest part of your design, the thickest line, is going to be the top of your ovoid. Okay, so if any part of your design comes out to be thicker than that, you need to find a way to break that line. And we're going to break this line here inside of this ovoid by drawing more ovoids. But we're going to use the top line here, borrow it, so to say, to help create our ovoids. Okay, so we're going to come off of our top line here, just inside, coming down, going from thin down to thick on the bottom, and then back up to thin on the side and top. Okay, so there's one. Now we need to create a negative space in here, so we're going to draw another one, coming right off that top line, coming down, thin to thick to thin, and we create, in doing so, a crescent ovoid shape. Inside of here, so we have positive space, positive space. And this is just one way to, quote unquote, break the line. there are many other ways. Some are very simple, some are very, very complex. Now, once we have our floating ovoid drawn in, there is a conformity that goes all the way back to when this was just carved, before it was painted, and that we put a fine line around it, and that helps to secure it in position and define its space, because the floating ovoid here is one of the very few things that do not touch anything else. Now, there are other exceptions, of course, but I did say one of the very few. And here we have a completed form line ovoid. Now we can make modifications to our floating ovoid. If I were to make it just a little bit smaller, I could then modify the fine line coming out to make it look more like an eye. All right, before I ask everybody to move on to the next step here, I'll give you guys another minute to draw what I've got down so far. And then the next part, it's go kind of quickly. And then I'm hoping that we have enough time to do an actual design together. How's everybody doing? Doing good? Louise looks fabulous. Great. All right. Randy, Peggy, good, good. All right. Yay. I'm excited. Rebecca looking great. Annie, yes. Good, good. Dr. Liz looks good. Thomas looks good. Maria looking great. Wow, look at you guys go. Fabulous work, guys. Yes. Loving it. Yay. All right. We're going to take our ovoid now, and we're going to work on drawing U shapes here. So, hold on. There we go. So we're going to draw a U shape coming off, and this is a very common shape in form line design, where you have the ovoid and a U shape combo. We're going to start here on the bottom of our ovoid, and we're going to come straight out off of the bottom of our ovoid a little ways. Okay, don't want to go too far. Hopefully remember to load this with lead. There we go. Okay. Typically, you do not want your U shape to be longer than your ovoid. Okay. So when you're drawing your designs, you need to think very carefully about that to make sure that if you have like a long beak, like in a raven, you want to make sure you have a longer ovoid. If you're drawing a wolf, you want to have a long snout, you want to draw a longer ovoid. Now there are, of course, exceptions to that, but we'll talk about that another time. So we've got my bottom line coming off. I want my top line to come off and come out, tapering just a little bit down. And then parallel to our center line, I'm going to put a cap on the end. And that's going to be the start of my U shape here. Then I'll round off my corners. Small corner, if you're wondering how small of a corner, you could use your ovoid bottom corners as your measurement. with that. Just a small curve on the top and the bottom. We have our U shape. Now, the fun thing with U shapes is that they are our secondary building block. Our ovoid is kind of like our cornerstone piece. When we draw our designs, it's going to be one of the first things that we draw. And then we build our design up using ovoids, other ovoids, and other U shapes, but especially the U shapes. Okay. So, for instance, this could be the start of the snout of a whale. It could be the start of the beak of an eagle or a raven. It could be the start of a shoulder with an arm coming out, or a hip with a leg starting to come out. So this is used quite versatilely for a lot of different things, this particular combination. Now, to make this a form line U shape, we want the end of our U shape here to be thicker than the legs. And the legs are going to be as drawn as evenly as you can. And you could use your ovoid as your measuring stick for that by making the end of your U shape either just as thick or slightly thinner than the top of your ovoid. And then your legs can be carried out just as wide as the thin part of your ovoid. You want them to be even. Okay. And then we round off our outer corners here. And then when we start attaching our U shape to our ovoid, we're going to do something different here. We're going to come in, and when we get close to our ovoid here, coming off on our leg, we're going to start curving in and down to a point. Okay, so that our ovoid connects to our U shape at a small point. It's still touching, but it's a small connecting point. We do that on the top as well, like that. Okay. Now, once we have our outer edge and our inner edge drawn in, you can fill in your space to create one singular line. And we've successfully made a form line U shape. It goes from thin to thick. To thin. I'm going to take another minute here to kind of walk you through what goes into this other space here. We have now our primary form line here, which is our form line ovoid and our form line U shape. We have our positive space, which is where the lines are, and our negative space, which is where the lines aren't. Inside of our ovoid, we have filled in the negative space in there with a floating ovoid, broken the line, so we created more positive and negative space inside, and then we have a fine line going around it. Now inside of our U shape, we're going to draw another U shape with a narrow space between the primary and what is now the secondary. Okay. All right. So I have created negative space now between the primary and the secondary. My U shape is still touching the ovoid. Okay. And now, because this is secondary, it doesn't need to be quite as thick on the top. So we're making another form line U shape, but it's going to be narrower. So narrower top, narrower legs. And just try to make sure that you get your legs to be even to each other. Okay. Now, typically, our primary form line is black, typically. Our secondary form line is red. You can use a colored pencil if you want, or a marker, or pen, because I happen to have one handy. And we are still going from thin to thick to thin. And we've created more positive space, and we have another area of negative space. And here is another shape for us. We're going to use what's called a trigon to fill this space. So we kind of want to mark where the middle of our U shape is here. And I'm going to come from near the very top of this space down just a little bit on this one side from the center, coming down and then curving out and going into my ovoid. Okay, and then I do the same thing on the other side. Down, curving out, and going down into my ovoid. This is a neat little shape called a trigon. This is a fine line trigon used to break up negative space. If we were to put this inside of a U shape, we could create a what's called a split U. And here we have our ovoid and U-shaped combination, nearly a design. Give you guys a second to get that drawn in, and then I want to do something, but we're going to have to do it quick. But I'm excited for it, so I know you guys can do it. The trigon is as a fine line is black. Okay. Now there's more that I could say about this, but I like to try to remember the philosophies of KISS, both of them. Just keep it simple. And if you can keep it simple, we can rock and roll all night and party every day. All right, here we go. We're going to do a design now. when we draw our form line designs, we're not just creating abstract artwork for the sake of being abstract. We become kind of scientists, examining what it is our subject, okay, what makes it special and unique. And one of the things I like to do when teaching form line is we're going to draw our hand, okay? It's something that everybody thinks they know the back of quite well, but our hand is very special and unique. For starters, we have two, okay? Our hand can be broken down into several different things. We have our fingers sticking out from the palm of our hand. Now we can break this down even more. Each finger is special and unique to the point where they all have their individual names. Our pinky, our ring finger, our middle finger, index finger, and our thumb. Okay, and they all have their special position on the hand as to where they are. Our thumb and our pinky are on the farthest out points, and then the other three fingers fall into place in between there. We have our four fingers that point straight up, and our thumb, which comes off to the side and is actually kind of laying on its side. Okay, so it's all special and unique. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to figure out where we're going to draw our form line ovoid. Okay, I don't want to draw it too high. I'm not going to have room for my fingers. I don't want to draw it too far off to one side. I'm not going to have room for, you know, depending on which hand you're drawing, your thumb. Okay, so I want my ovoid to come up about the middle here. And down. We find where our center is. Okay. I'm doing this quickly because we've done this before. So you should start having some muscle memory, not much, but a little bit. We round off our corners. Cleaning it up as best we can. Make it look all pretty. Okay. Once you have your ovoid, we make it a form line ovoid. Going from the top down, going from thick to thin, and then back up to thick. Like so. right. How's everybody doing? So this next part, once you have your form line ovoid, is we're going to start laying out our fingers going up, okay? So I want my thumb to be over here on this side, which means that my pointer finger is going to be over here on this side as well. So I'm going to come up straight off the side of my ovoid, straight up. All right, now I don't want to go up too high because I have the finger right next to it is the tallest finger, and I want to make sure there's room for that. And on the other side, we're going to come up, not quite as tall as our pointer finger. And then in the space between the edge of our ovoid and the center, we're going to mark kind of right in the middle there on either side. Okay. And we're going to curve our top of our U shape, really tall U shape, but very narrow, coming down and meeting at that point. Okay.
Did you say you split the difference between the middle and the side?
So here's my middle,
Uh-huh.
okay, and the side. And so right in the between that. And now, either we have antenna or we're at a rock concert. And then for your other two fingers, which is following the same idea here, we're going to go up from this point here, straight up. Middle finger is the tallest. And we're going to come down and meet right in the center. And then we draw our ring finger, which is shorter than the middle, but taller than your index finger typically. Okay. Now in these spaces where our U shapes are connecting to our ovoid, we're going to separate the U shapes from the ovoid with a little crescent here, going from one point to the other. Kind of like making our knuckles here. Okay. Now we know how old I am. I am 4 years old. And then we're going to draw on our thumb. So here we go. We come out from the bottom, just a little ways out. And for my other leg of my U shape coming out, I'm going to come down to about the middle of my ovoid here and draw my leg coming out. See how I've got it curved a little bit here? So it has a smooth transition into my ovoid. Okay, I have my U shape here. And I want to make sure that it's a form line U shape. And then for our actual thumb sticking up, we can come off the end of the U shape, straight up. And we're going to curve the end of the thumb out a little bit. In the middle of this space here between the tip of our thumb and where it joins on the U shape, we're going to mark that lightly right here. And I'm going to make 2 U shapes coming out. One coming down into that point, and another one coming down, curving into our U shape towards the ovoid, and putting in a little crescent across there. And then all that is left after this is to fill in our secondaries with our floating ovoid and our secondary U shapes inside of the U here. And then you can color it in. Now, I don't know how you guys feel about going over time, but it is now 5 o'clock. If you guys are up for it, I'll stick around for a little bit longer here and finish this up with you. But it is 5, and I understand if it's time to go.
Abel, keep
Yes.
going. And those,
Okay.
if people have to leave, we are recording this, and we'll send the recording out to people so we can all see what to do.
Okay, fabulous.
Okay, thank you.
Yay! So inside of my hand here again, we're going to do our floating ovoid, which again is going to be sitting up high so that we have a narrow space in the negative space on the top and a wide space in the negative space on the bottom. And if your floating ovoid again is thicker than the top, break this space up with our crescent.
Is this hand like a fist then? I'm thinking.
Like this.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Once you have your floating ovoid in, don't forget your fine line that goes around it.
Most people have stayed. Good. Pardon me? Most people have stayed on. Fascinating. Mm-hmm.
And then inside of our U shape, put in our secondary U shape. Now I'm going to, because this is a smaller space, I'm going to use our U-shaped line here. And I'm going to draw in our trigon to make this a split U like this. Okay. And then the fun part, translating all the lines. If you look, you have a lot of things going on here. You have a lot of outside edge, inside edge. You have a lot of positive space, a lot of negative space in here. So if you're ever looking at a design and are feeling confused, try to find your primary form line ovoid and then work from there.
And you were saying that the second ovoid is usually colored red?
In here, yes. So we have our primary line, which is the exterior lines of our designs, kind of like your skin. Then we have our secondary lines, which go inside on the negative space. Which are a combination of fine lines and red lines and sometimes black and red. Now we've gone through and we've drawn this design, and each and every line was drawn with intent. All of our positive space represents an intentional choice, an intentional decision. And all of the negative space represents everything you've chosen not to do. Remember, there's two sides to a choice: things you've chosen to do, things you've chosen not to do. How do your choices reflect on the picture that you are painting or carving that represents your life? How is it showing what is going on in a classroom? How is it showing as you're driving down the street? How is it when you're cooking dinner? Trying to follow that recipe as closely as you can. Yes, you can use U shapes to break up the fingers so that you can get all of the joints in your fingers to show. Yes. Just real quick here, just kind of showing a pinky. Got it coming off here. Here's the main knuckle. Then I've got two joints coming up. So I can break it up here, here, to U shapes. Like that. And if you wanted to, you can draw in a little ovoid for your fingernail.
Thank you very much for doing this today. This was nice.
Yes, thank you for coming. It was an honor to be invited to be a part of this. I really had fun.
Very good.
So like this?
Let me see here. That could work too. Yeah, yeah. As long as you remember to honor the lines in your of your primary form line of your U shapes. Yeah. Good job, guys.
Thank you so much. I learned a ton today.
Fabulous. Thank you.
Could I ask why you did the right on where the fingers meet the palm?
Yes.
I must have missed that. What is the significance of that, or like,
These
how do you
here
work that?
these separate the fingers from the palm, and it does a couple things. One, it honors the line of the ovoid.
It makes it show.
Okay. But if I were to leave these fingers whole, it would create a space where the fingers join up to the ovoid that is thicker than the top of the ovoid.
Yeah.
And the thickest part of our design should be just this top part of the ovoid here. So you can see that none of the fingers are wider than this here.
Really interesting. Yeah.
Good
Thank
question.
you for sharing with us today. And my
Yeah.
question is, where can we go to learn more about this if we're interested?
There are some books out on form line design. There's a lot of classes that are being made available online through the University of Alaska, or starting to. I have a few videos up on YouTube, and basic instruction on how to draw this design, and also kind of beginning form line stuff.
You can join us at the Institute this summer.
Yes, that too. I was getting there. Yes.
And what about See Alaska?
See Alaska has workshops that they're doing. If you can go to their website and Facebook page, and even sign up for email notifications. They have artists that are now, because of COVID, they're doing remote teaching kind of like this. So you can sign up for classes through them as well.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah.
Everybody want to share their final project? Look, man. Here we go.
Yay!
Hey. Hi, Annie.
I
Nice
love
to see you.
it. Fabulous.
Good. I did one too.
Good job, everybody. Lovely. All right.
Well, thank you very much, Abel.
Yeah. I had kids, and also at the Institute, a lot of teachers also took and used their hand designs as they're raising their hand in Zoom meetings.
We did miniature ones and put them on sticks, and it worked like a charm.
It was great. I loved it. It was so fun. Thank you guys all again so much for having me join you today. I really had a good time. Excellent.
Ganakshish.
Yes, thank you. We'll get this video out to everybody who has registered. And thank you, Abel, for joining us today.
Yes, this was great.
Okay, goodbye, everybody. Thank you for coming.
Hi, I'd like to thank Abel Ryan one more time for sharing his form line drawing with us. It was a great workshop. I'd also like to share some upcoming things from AAEC. We have our Summer Arts Institute coming up. Most of them are in June. They are all distance delivered. We have the Fairbanks Multicultural Arts Institute, June 14th through 18th, with a 2-credit opportunity. The Kenai Social Emotional Learning and the Arts Institute, June 1st through 5th, a 2-credit opportunity. Kodiak Arts Science and Literacy Institute, June 7th through 12th, also a 2-credit opportunity. This is a misprint. Juneau Arts and Culture Institute. Arts and Culture Institute coming up July. Arts and Culture Institute is coming up July 26th through August 5th, a 4-credit opportunity. I also want to invite you to share your work in progress from this workshop or others to both the hashtag ArtsEd Month AK and hashtag AK ArtsEd. It is Arts Education Month, and AACC has been celebrating arts and education all month. We have themes from animals, harmony, culture, community, and coming up is dreams. So you're welcome to share any of those themes and encourage you to share your students' work with us through our social media using those hashtags. So we look forward to seeing it. Thank you so much.